You ever have one of those perfect quiet nights? The kind that feels untouched by the world until everything goes sideways in a heartbeat. That was me sitting on my porch, coffee mug warm between my hands, telescope locked on Jupiter. The air was crisp, the neighborhood silent, and for once everything was calm. I didn't know it yet, but within the hour, my peaceful evening would explode into chaos, complete with flashing lights, raised voices, and a police cruiser parked squarely in my driveway. See, I'm an amateur astronomer, always have been. My telescope isn't just some cheap backyard toy. It's a $2,000 Celestron, the kind of equipment that makes you feel like you can reach out and touch the stars. And that night, the sky was flawless, Jupiter practically glowing like a jewel. Then, around 9:30 p.m., I caught something out of the corner of my eye. A movement near the fence line. At first, I figured it was just a raccoon passing through, but then I heard it. Laughter. Teenage laughter. My stomach tightened. I stepped out, grabbed my flashlight, and that's when I saw him. Logan, Karen's teenage son, crouched next to my telescope with a screwdriver in his hand. He was mid-unscrew like my gear was his weekend project. "Hey, what do you think you're doing?" I barked. He froze for a second, then threw on the most casual grin he could muster. "Oh, I was just looking at it," he said. "Right," I shot back. "Because everyone looks at telescopes by taking the tripod apart." I told him to back away, but before the words were fully out of my mouth, he took off, bolting toward his house with one of my lens caps in hand, like some kind of prize. 2 minutes later, the real show began. Karen came storming across my lawn in full late-night drama mode, robe flying behind her like a cape, slippers smacking the pavement, fury etched into every line of her face. "How dare you accuse my son of stealing?" she shrieked. "He said you were spying on him with that thing." Spying. My telescope was pointed at Jupiter, not into anyone's window. I tried to explain, but she was already jabbing numbers into her phone, yelling something about creepy neighbors and illegal surveillance. So, there I was, standing beneath a flawless night sky, waiting for the police because her kid got caught trying to steal my telescope. When the officers arrived, she didn't waste a second. Karen launched straight into a full-blown performance. There were trembling lips, crocodile tears, accusations about how her poor baby was terrified. Meanwhile, Logan stood behind her, like a guilty little shadow, avoiding eye contact with everyone. And then things took a turn. One of the officers squinted at me and said, "Wait a second. Aren't you the guy who works with the state attorney's office?" Karen's face drained of color so fast it was almost comical. "Yeah," I said, evenly. "I do. Consulting work for the state attorney's office, mostly property and privacy cases." The officers exchanged a look. Suddenly, the energy shifted. They weren't treating me like some random neighbor anymore. Karen, however, wasn't ready to let go. "So what?" she snapped. "That doesn't change the fact that he's spying on my son." The officer next to her raised a brow. "Ma'am, that's an astronomical telescope. It's pointed at the sky." Her face twisted with frustration. "Well, how do you know he wasn't filming? These things have cameras," I sighed. "Ma'am, this is an eyepiece, not a camera. You can look through it yourself if you want." I gestured toward the telescope, still half unbolted, thanks to her kid's handiwork. She glared at it like it was a live snake. "I'm not touching that thing," she snapped. Then, in the most unexpected plot twist of the night, Logan mumbled. Mom, can we just go? I didn't even do anything. That's when one of the officers calmly flipped on his body cam. Actually, son, I'm going to need you to explain why you were on his property with a screwdriver. Karen spun around like a top. You're questioning my child. He's a minor. Yes, ma'am, the officer said coolly. And minors can still commit theft or vandalism. Her face went pale again. She opened her mouth, but before she could launch into another tirade, I stepped in gently. Officer, I'm not pressing charges yet, but I do want this on record. The telescope isn't cheap, and this isn't the first time there's been issues. Karen snapped her head toward me. What's that supposed to mean? It means, I said, steadily. Last month, someone spray-painted my mailbox, and the week before, that someone left me a note that said, stargazers aren't welcome here. Now, the officers were interested. They started taking notes, asking follow-up questions. Karen stammered, pretending to have no idea what I was talking about, but Logan couldn't even meet my eyes. Finally, one of the officers turned to me. We'll file a report, sir. Ma'am, I strongly suggest you and your son stay off his property. Karen muttered something under her breath, grabbed Logan by the arm, and stomped back home like a storm cloud. But that wasn't the end of it. Not by a long shot, because the very next morning, my phone rang. I glanced at the caller ID. My stomach dropped. It was the state attorney himself. When I saw a state attorney's office flash across my phone, I figured it might just be a routine follow-up. Maybe the officer had filed a report and someone was checking in, but the voice that came through wasn't the usual administrative monotone. It was him. Hey, he said, low and serious. I just got a call from the precinct. Sounds like your HOA has been giving you trouble again. I exhaled slowly. You could say that. Karen's kid tried to steal my telescope. She called the cops on me for spying. Same old story. There was a pause, then a quiet chuckle. You've got to be kidding. That woman again. I smiled. The one and only. He sighed. Listen, I've been reviewing complaints tied to your Turns out, Karen Mara Dunning, that's her real name, has filed multiple false reports against other residents. One even claimed a guy's pool lights were a security threat. She has a history of overstepping. I nodded along. That part didn't surprise me. What caught me off guard was his next line. I'm assigning an investigator to look into the HOA board. Something about the way they handle fines, complaints, and property disputes doesn't sit right with me. That got my attention. You think it's corruption? I asked. Something close to it, he said. If she's using her position to harass residents or manipulate property values, we'll find out. That afternoon, a black sedan rolled up outside my house. A tall woman stepped out in a dark blazer, clipboard in hand. Mr. Wells, she asked. I'm Investigator Phelps with the state attorney's office. Mind if I ask a few questions about your Over the next hour, I laid everything out. The bogus citations for my non-regulation lawn. The letter banning unsupervised stargazing after 9 p.m. and the telescope incident. She took meticulous notes, nodding or shaking her head in disbelief at the details. When she finished, she said, I can't promise outcomes yet. But this isn't the first complaint we've had about Mrs. Dunning. I'll be speaking with a few of your neighbors. And speak she did. Over the next few days, I noticed her car parked near different houses. Residents leaned out, whispered, and gestured angrily. Something was brewing, and Karen could feel it. By day 4, she was back on my lawn, eyes wild, phone in hand, screaming that I had called in the state attorney to ruin her life. If only she knew. I hadn't called anyone. They had contacted me after the police report. By the time the sun dipped below the rooftops that Friday, the neighborhood was buzzing. Cars slowed as they passed my house. Curtains twitched. Whispers floated across the cul-de-sac like smoke. Everyone knew something was happening, and at the center of it was Karen. She stormed across my lawn as the sky turned gold. Phone clutched in one hand, a stack of papers in the other. Her son trailed behind, arms crossed, eyes down. "You think you're clever, don't you?" she spat. "Calling the state attorney to investigate me. You've ruined my reputation. Turned the whole neighborhood against me." I stayed calm, though my pulse was racing. "Karen, I didn't call anyone. They contacted me after the police report." "You did this to yourself, liar," she screamed. "You've been plotting this since you moved in. You and your little telescope creeping on everyone, getting people in trouble." Before I could respond, a voice cut through her tirade. "That's enough, Mrs. Dunning." Investigator Phelps stepped out of her car, badge glinting in the sunset. "We've spoken with several of your neighbors. We've reviewed the HOA's records. You've been issuing unauthorized fines, falsifying complaint forms, and using HOA funds for personal expenses." Karen froze. The color drained from her face. "That's not true," she whispered. "They're lying. All of them." Phelps didn't flinch. "We have documentation, bank transfers, digital signatures, and witness statements, including from your own board members." Karen's eyes darted around wildly, hoping someone might defend her. Nobody did. Even her son looked away. "You can't do this to me," she whispered. "You don't understand how much I've done for this neighborhood." "Oh, we understand," Phelps said evenly. "You've done plenty." At that moment, 2 uniformed officers stepped onto my property. One of them, the same officer from that first night, nodded at me before turning to Karen. "Mrs. Dunning, you're being placed under arrest for misuse of HOA funds and filing false police reports." The papers slipped from her hands, fluttering across the grass like fallen leaves. Her son stepped back, tears welling in his eyes. She tried to speak, but only a choked sob escaped. As they led her to the cruiser, she looked back at me. "You'll regret this," she hissed. I met her gaze. "No, Karen, I'll finally sleep under the stars again." The car door shut. Flashing lights faded down the street. That night, I stood by my telescope once more, silent, peaceful. The universe stretched endlessly above me. For the first time in months, the stars were all mine. And if you enjoyed this crazy HOA story, don't forget to hit that like button. Subscribe for more real-life neighborhood dramas, and tell me in the comments what you would have done in my place.